trials. We came so far through our weakness. We found a love, even the stars between us won't marry us. One day we can be together, and this moment could last forever. I say that you and I have found a piece of heaven, so I pray we can be together one day. We found love in separate ways. Heartbreak is a wonderful price to pay. We came so far through our weakness. We found a love, even the stars between us won't marry us. One day we can be together, and this moment could
One of these days, I am going to remember to unmute myself when I start the stream. Good day. I was going to say good afternoon, but I know we have people coming from all different kinds of time zones. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever to ya. We are happy, or I guess I'm happy to be back. I know there's going to be a lot of disappointed fans here today, but Reagan was not able to make it to the stream today. So you get about an hour and a half of unadulterated time with your boy Steven today. Practice has just finished up and we are starting qualifying. We have a lot of drivers out. We have some changes to the schedule, changes to how the server works, changes up and down. So let's do a little bit of an overview as we get started today. Where is my cursor? That's a great question. Can't navigate without the cursor. There we go. Going into a quick season overview, as always, we have our GT3 cars. We have our three classes. We have Pro, Silver, and AM. For our championship, the race weekends, they will still be every other weekend, as always. Practice has been shortened. I believe it was 45 minutes before, or it may have even been an hour. It was longer than it was now, but that has now been shortened to 30 minutes. Qualifying has also been shortened from 30 minutes, where we typically had 10 minutes for each class. That is now 20 minutes total for qualifying, and everyone is out on track at the same time. And then the race has been extended by 5 minutes to 1 hour and 20 minutes. But there are also a couple of endurance races, which will be the 5th and 10th round of the seasons, I believe. But that will definitely be exciting to have some longer races back on the schedule. And taking from the prior seasons, we still have that 75-minute pit window. There is one mandatory pit stop, but you are only mandated to refuel. You do not have to take tires. There are points for the top 10 overall, as well as top 10 within the class. And the worst result is going to be removed, which allows our drivers to miss one race. So that should hopefully help for drivers that need to miss one race here or there for whatever reason. And taking a look at our schedule, we're starting off here at Barcelona. 2 weeks from now, we'll go to Nürburgring, then Kyalami, Watkins Glen. As mentioned, the 5th round is going to be an endurance at Mount Panorama or Bathurst. That is going to be extremely exciting. We'll then go to Imola on April 20th, Laguna Seca, Valencia, the Red Bull Ring, which is a new release. If you haven't been keeping up with Assetto Corsa Competizione news, that just released a couple weeks ago with GT2 cars, which is an exciting new addition. And we will end the season at everyone's favorite Spa-Francorchamps for another endurance event. So a lot to be excited for in the schedule, but we will come back to the overview, or not overview, but the live qualifying. Drivers still still have to set a lap. I think Tyler Babin here might be the first driver across the line to set a lap. Lap times around 1:44, 1:45 seconds for our fastest drivers. We're going to have to see what Tyler is able to lay down as he crosses a 45.6. Darren Chan bests that right behind him with a 45.5, so exactly a tenth faster. Marcus Ness currently P3 with a 47.5, and Darren Chan, I think, has gone ahead and pulled off. He might have only fueled enough for one lap, but that was enough to put him in provisional pole, so very nice lap for him as we come over to Marcus Ness. V-Guard up to P3 with a 45.9. Definitely expecting some of those times to come on down as drivers get used to their qualifying tires and fuel loads and just get a feel for everything. It's also going to be an adjustment for drivers to be used to everyone out on track. In previous seasons with our AM drivers starting first, we typically only saw maybe 3 or 4 cars out on track at a time. So it's definitely, I think, a very nice change to see everyone out together as Kurt Peters Perennial fast driver, was definitely showcasing quite a lot of speed in Season 4, has taken P1 by almost a second over Darren Chan, 0.998 to be exact, of a second. So very, very good lap from Kurt. He was doing very well in practice as well. I don't think I've seen what kind of machinery Kurt is in this season. That looks like the Ferrari 296 that Kurt Peters is in. So he's definitely finding quite a bit of speed in that Italian stallion today. But, you know, looking at the screen right now, I feel like something is missing. Something in that top right. We had a request towards the end of last season, and I am nothing if not a man of the people. So request fulfilled. We have a track map up on screen now, so you can see where the current drivers are, as Pashoff now sets the bar for P1, a 44.3, about a tenth and a half ahead of Kurt Peters. So we see definitely some good competition going on for pole position right now. But yeah, track map in the top right. So what you see is, again, the position of every driver on track. The number in the circle is their current position. So if you were now looking at Johan Halben in P12, so if you look at P12 on the track map, you can see he is entering that hairpin after the middle straight. So that's how you can keep an eye on where your favorite driver currently is on track if we are not following them live. We also have a speed trap set up into going into turn 1, so we can see some of the fastest times from the drivers. Looking at max speeds, it looks like Richard Walters currently has the fastest speed of anyone, tied with Bryce Prevost at 270 kilometers an hour, which is definitely quite a bit of speed to be heading down into T1 for. Really have to get on the brakes quite a bit to get that car slowed down. But Kurt Peters is in the BMW. Bryce is in that Ferrari 296, same as Kurt Peters. So a couple different cars are able to hit that 270 mark. Might be running a lower downforce configuration. Looking at the data, we see most drivers hovering around like 268 to 266 for kilometers per hour being their max speed. So a couple drivers able to get into the 270s, but it is rare. I think most drivers are opting for maybe a little less downforce than normal, but you do want a good amount of downforce for later on in Sector 1 and Sector 3 especially are some pretty tight sectors on this track. Richard Walters now up into P1, about 900ths ahead of Rosen Pashoff. And we have Christian Comare going a little off track here. That is another change for this season. We have quite a few familiar returning faces, a couple of completely new faces, and then some faces that we haven't seen in quite some time. So it's nice to see Christian Comare back on track. I honestly can't tell you the last time I saw Christian racing. I don't even know if he has been... He might have been on one or two of our broadcasts. He definitely hasn't been able to race that much. But Christian joined, I think, maybe a couple months after I did back in 2021. And it is always a pleasure seeing him back out on track. Love his energy, love his presence. So happy that he is here. We have, again, familiar faces, Hatisi, Castillo, Halben, who all joined last season, I believe. Halkova, who's been here for quite some time. Marcus Ness, who's been here a couple seasons. Paul Krobs, Bryce Prevost. Simon, who joined last season, I think. Someone who is new, let's go ahead and take a peek at P4. Nico Dudek is new. Also in the Ferrari, we have quite a few Ferraris. We're going to change some of the data in the timing tower. Instead of car number, let's look at manufacturer and take a look at this. So we have, it looks like 5 Ferraris. out on track. A couple Audis. We have 2 McLarens, a BMW in P1 and P9 currently. We have 1 Lamborghini. I think that's a solitary Lamborghini for Johan Halben. And Paul Krabs, along with Ligue Simon, the only Mercedes drivers. So a couple of German cars here and there, a couple of Italians, but the Ferrari definitely the pick of the litter in terms of what drivers are choosing. And Richard Walters, still P1, but has improved his time to a 44.0, almost breaking the 43 barrier. Nico Dudek, who we were just looking at before, now sitting in P2 as Kurt Peters goes off track and is going to call it. He is going to go back to the pits. Now that we are a little over halfway into qualifying, he is going to throw on some fresh rubber, refuel a little bit, and head back out on track, most likely. But yeah, Richard's still sitting P1. Nico has improved. Kurt, I think, has improved on his time a little bit to get himself up into P3. Tyler, 44.9. Tyler Babin, always a quick driver. I think he has said in the Discord that this is going to be more of a arrive and drive kind of season for him. He isn't going to be doing as much practice as he has in previous seasons. Who knows if that's true? He could just be trying to lie to us to make it seem like he is slower than he actually is. But still pretty fast. Coming up with excuses, Tyler. Come on. Only 5 thousandths behind Tyler is Darren Chan. Darren has displayed quite a bit of pace, especially starting last season. He was also quite pacey, or always quite pacey, I think I meant to say. Just needing to find maybe a little bit more of that consistency in just hooking up those laps over and over and over again. And we have Darren in the chat. 5 thousandths you need. Actually, you need 6 if you want to pass Tyler. 5 would just tie you. And since Tyler set the lap time before, he would still keep that P5 spot, I believe. So you need 6 thousandths if you want to get up into P5. You can't be faster than a pro, Darren. You've done it before. I believe in ya. If anyone can do it, you can. Jorge Esteban, currently P7 with a 44.94, just a couple hundredths behind Darren and Tyler there. Then we have Gary Bosman and Vigard Johansson in P9 and P8 respectively. Vigard a couple of tenths behind Jorge, and then Gary about nearly 5 tenths behind. Is that nearly 5 tenths? Yeah, it's like 4.7 tenths. I can do math. 4.7 tenths behind, if that even makes sense. 47 hundredths, yeah, that's 4.7 tenths. It's been a while since we've had to broadcast. It's just me all alone today. Reagan left me high and dry. The pressure is already starting to get to me a little bit. And we'll have to see if the pressure is getting to some of our drivers as well. Haven't seen any major improvements for Richard Walters. I'm going to turn off the autopilot. Richard Walters has been flashing purple, but he just started his lap, so only coming through T1 now. We'll have to see if he is able to improve on his times. But right now, Richard has the fastest overall Sector 1, and he set that on his fast lap. Nico Dudek in P2 has the fastest Sector 2 by about a tenth and a half over Richard Walters. Kurt Peters is not too far behind the time, the Sector 2 time set by Nico. But Nico, the fastest Sector 2, he also set that on his fastest lap. And then the fastest Sector 3 time, this feels a little bizarre, but P4, Rosen Pashov, by a couple of tenths over Kurt and Nico. So Rosen Pashov flying in that technical final sector. Quite a lot of speed that he carries in that Porsche. Pashov has been a big fan of Porsche. I don't think I've actually ever seen him drive anything other than a Porsche. So he has quite a bit of experience and familiarity. He knows how that car handles, and he knows how to whip that rear end and manage that oversteer, get the car turning around all of these tricky corners that we see Richard Walters going through right now. Richard's still flashing purple. He can't decide if he wants to improve or not. I think if If it is an improvement, it's going to be very, very slight. I think that flashing purple has gone away. I don't believe this is going to be an improvement for him. And crosses the line. That is not an improvement. That was a 44.225, a couple of tenths off. But you know who is improving is Tyler Babin. And what we are going to do is we are going to put personal best, and then we are going to have personal best delta on the timing tower so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. So Tyler does improve from a 44.9 to a 44.670, and he is going to be wanting to improve by a couple more tenths to get closer to Pashoff, but with 4.5 minutes left, he only has about 3, maybe 4 laps left on the table. And Tracy in the chat, a shout out to the guys that did the Daytona 24. Yeah, I was actually a part of that team. That was myself, Richard Walters, who's currently P1, V-Guard, and Tyler Babin. It was the 4 of us taking on the Daytona 24. We were nowhere close to being the top split in that session. There were many thousands of drivers participating in that. I think we were split 31 out of 45 or 46, so definitely towards the bottom, but still a very competitive group that we were driving with. We started 20th, I want to say, and made our way up to 3rd by the time the race ended, so that was definitely a very high point for us that we were all happy with. But yeah, Tracy, thank you for the shout out. We appreciate that. Tyler Babin down half second right now as Richard Walters does improve. I was just going to go over to him. I saw him just turn purple at the very end. Not the biggest improvement from a 44.06 I think it was to a 44.03. It is an improvement, but still ever so tantalizingly close to the 43 mark. I don't think we're going to see anyone breaking in there unless Nico or Kurt is able to throw in a blinder of a lap. We saw Paul Krobs showing a yellow flag there and returning to the pit. We'll have to see if he ends up coming back out on track, but he might be calling it. He has a 4/10 gap to Bryce Prevost behind, so he might be feeling confident in his P11 standing right now. Richard Walters lost a little bit of time in that second sector last lap, but he set up purple first and third sector, now coming to a little bit of traffic. I think that was Johan Hauben, yes, who is now showing yellow, and we can see on the track map that that was him. So we see Richard still trying to improve. He is flashing purple here and there, maybe losing a little bit of time, braking a little bit too early, but getting a decent exit still. He's flashing red. Let's head over to Tyler Babin once again, who was showing a little bit. Actually, let's come to Nico do that. He was flashing purple a little bit. Very, very early in his lap. Just coming through T2 and T3 right now. So he is going to have quite a ways if he wants to improve. He is actually losing a little bit of time now. Don't think he's going to be challenging Richard Walters this lap unless he is able to really, really nail his Sector 2 and Sector 3. Let's go over to Darren Chan, flashing a couple of tenths up as he is about halfway through his lap. So definitely could be on for an improvement, but at a 10th improvement, that would not put him necessarily in contention to pass Tyler, but could give him some breathing room ahead of Jorge Esteban, who is only 7 thousandths behind him in terms of his fastest lap. Darren coming through the final technical corners here. And goes a little bit wide, is going to have to take to the escape road, but is going to get a pretty solid launch onto this final corner to start a final lap. No! Gets a little bit of snap oversteer, pulls off into the gravel, and that is going to be it for Darren Chan. Going into the pits, no more time to get back out on track. Coming back to Richard Walters, coming through, I don't remember my turn numbers, that might have been turn 8. If my memory serves, he is about halfway through his lap. And Rosen Pashoff, let's actually go over to him. He was flashing 4 tenths up. That would have put him in the 43s. And well clear of pole position, but he lost a lot of that. Could be a little bit of improvement here. Christian, game says you're pro, but you are AM. Not sure why that is the case. I mentioned before that there were some server changes, so we are no longer using simracing.gp. We are essentially running our own servers and now using the SimGrid to kind of do some of the server management and sign-up processes of that. But we have a lot more in our hands now in terms of the admins having to manage a lot of those settings. So yeah, definitely bear with us a little bit as we navigate some of those changes. We did do a practice race, I believe a week or two ago, but it is still early days for us in this change. So again, we appreciate your patience in that. And it is a happy birthday for Mr. Halbin. Johan Halbin, thank you for joining us today on your birthday. Hopefully you'll have a good race result to be able to celebrate that. But overall, as we have Kurt Peters crossing the line, it's going to be an improvement up to P2. Crosses the line with a 44.08 to pip Nico Dudek for that P2 spot, but not good enough to surpass Richard Walters. So Richard, excellent effort in your qualifying lap to be P1. We are missing some notable drivers from the past couple seasons. Carl Nordell and Oystein Brenham are two names that are big folks that we have not seen today. So that's going to be unfortunate not to have some of those fast drivers, but definitely exciting to have quite a tight field. We have the top four separated by under a quarter of a second, which is very exciting. And Jorge Esteban, still the last driver out on track. Qualifying is not over yet, folks. 2/10 up, might pip Darren Chan for P7. And, gets P6 ahead of Vigard. What a lap, a 44.67, only 2 thousandths off of Tyler Babin. That could have been a P5 for Jorge Esteban. Phenomenal lap, Jorge. Way to stick it out, even when everyone had gone off track and back into the pits. You stuck it out and solidified that P6. Wonderful improvement. Great to see. Every time Johan is in the stream, you're going to have to pronounce my pronunciation, but Stein, I'm going to say that, will drink a beer. So we are going to definitely be flashing Johan Halbin quite a bit on the stream today. Halbin, sitting here in the pits, finished P15 for his birthday result. Car number 99, fastest lap of a 47.1. Johan, we are going to be cheering you on. Darren, oh my god, the Beamer is behind me. Oh no, you're going to have a big old Beamer M4 in your rear view mirrors. Hopefully there are no shenanigans going into that first corner between you and the Beamer. Damn it, only P3, blew 2 good laps. That is going to be, I think, the story of the season. Now that, I was going to say, since qualifying is shorter, drivers get fewer laps, but technically everyone's drive time is doubled, since before it was 10 minutes per class, but at the same time, our drivers are now having to deal with a lot more traffic on track, so it's going to be maybe a little bit harder to navigate some of that, be able to get in a good clean lap. You're going to have to be strategic and find the space on track in order to make all of that work, but we are going to go ahead and return to garage and drive again. And we will do, as always, why isn't it showing me how long we have until the race starts? That's not helpful. But anywho, we are going to go, as always, into our track walk and our overview. So a quick overview of the Barcelona circuit. For those of you who may not know, this is a track that's been around for a good little while. Unfortunately, we'll be leaving the F1 calendar soon as they make their way to Madrid in 2026, I believe. But quite a long straight on this circuit. Again, we were seeing drivers hit the high 260s, low 270s in terms of kilometers per hour. Turn 1, 2, 3, some tight corners leading to the long sweeping right-hander. Hard to stay on the inside and maintain that grip. Coming through some technical bits, long right-hander for T4, a shorter hairpin for T5. as you approach Worth and Kamsa. That Kamsa is really tough because you want to maximize that speed on the exit, but the track limits there are tricky, as well as some gravel there where you can lose quite a bit of time. But you want to maximize that speed onto that middle of the track straight, heading into La Caixa, a very pretty tight hairpin, and then again, Sector 3, pretty tricky, pretty technical. Need to maximize your slow speed corners through there if you want to have a good lap time. And then heading through New Holland, want to, again, maximize corner exit to make sure you take as much speed as possible onto that final straight. I think that's how some of our drivers hitting the 270 marker were able to do it. I got the call for 20 seconds to formation lap start. We are going to go ahead to our Barcelona track overview. I think we'll have time to do it before race start. So Barcelona track overview. Here we're going to see some cars on track. This is at nighttime. This is from a couple years ago, or a couple seasons ago, when we had this race at night. I was not able to get this updated, but the corners are still all the same. It's just a little darker. So heading into T1 and T2, we see some tricky corners, and then Hainaut is a long right-hander. You definitely want to try and stick to the inside for the fastest line, but widen that out as the turn exit approaches. Carry some speed into turn 4. Repsol, a long, also right-hander. That will bring you to a short little straight to Siat. This is not necessarily a hairpin, but it is a 180-degree corner to the left. Brings you to a little left-handed kink, and then to Worth, which is a short little left, and then a little right, which will bring you to, I believe it's Caixa, Kamsa, the longer right-hander. This is where you want to maximize speed, maximize that AstroTurf on the exit without getting into the gravel to keep some speed. This is La Caixa, the long or shorter left-hander, into another little left-hander to Banc Sabadell, a right-hander, another 180-degree corner. This track loves its 180-degree corners. And then to our final corners, we have Europe Car, the first little right-hander, into a tight 90-degree left, and then a tight 90-degree right. And you want to maximize the exit here, maybe take a little more curve than the driver of that Bentley did there. And then New Holland, again, you can use a little more of that AstroTurf on the exit there to end your lap. And that will be it for a track view of what Barcelona is like. But we are going to go back to our view. Johan back on the stream. I think that is a drink for one of our viewers here. 9 viewers today. That is definitely one of our, not necessarily the highest. I think we've been in the teens before, but I'll take it, 9 viewers. It's also going to be a test of my connection. We've had some issues prior with the stream cutting out. I've never been able to determine if it's internet or GPU or CPU related, or maybe just Twitch related. But I have moved. I'm in a new apartment where my upload speed is about 5 times higher than it was before. I now get about 250 megabit upload. So hopefully, if internet was the issue, hopefully that is no longer an issue. I currently see 0 frame drops and 0 slow frames on Twitch Studio. So hopefully that means we're in for a stream without lag, without dropouts, without any issues barring you from seeing all of the Bez Racing action. But for the start of the race, we're going to go ahead and pop it over to our autopilot, who is going to show us Ligure Simon right now. Actually, let's turn off autopilot. We are going to take a look at Richard Walters' P1 here, and we're viewing the Helicam. We have them very far ahead of the rest of the grid, Richard and Kurt. I think the game is going to be yelling at them to slow down a little bit and let the rest of the field catch back up. The grid is now tightly packed together again. And I get the call for the green light. We see the flagman waving that green flag, and Season 5 is underway here for Kurt Peters and Richard Walters, the front row of the grid. We are 3 wide, 4 wide. I think that's Jorge Esteban in the Porsche. Oh, and there's contact. There's a white Porsche on the not track part. That was Pashov in the white Porsche who was making it 4 wide there, I believe. got a little bit of contact. That is not going to be good for the start of his race. We'll have to see maybe a replay of that a little bit later on. But Richard Walters still leading. Kurt Peters in that black and orange Ferrari was able to survive. Pashoff definitely the loser in that situation. We are going to go ahead and get our car numbers back and then our relative or race gaps up so you can see the distance between each driver. And we have a collision between many cars involved in this. I don't see anything major. We have a purple Mercedes going slowly. I'm not sure. I believe that's Paul Krobs. Let's take a replay of Paul Krobs and see what happened here for him. So this is heading into exiting turn 4, heading up to T5. Paul Krobs on the brakes, gets a little tap to, I believe that's Gary Bosman, and it's just kind of a Constantina. We see Pashoff going a little off track in that white Porsche, and then Paul Krobs, I think, decides to pull over and slow down, recognizing that he hit somebody and wants to do the gentlemanly thing and let them catch back up, but then that causes a blue Mercedes there to have to slow down. And then Paul was just going slow. I'm not sure what was going on there for Paul Krobs, but definitely a weird thing to be going on there. But up front we have Kurt Peters chasing down Richard Walters for the lead. Johan Hauben, our birthday boy, is up into P12. He is up a good number of positions. Let's actually see, instead of car number, let's see position delta, and Johan Hauben is up 3 positions, but Mircea Hatisi up 7. So a great start for Hatisi. There are only 3 drivers that kept their starting positions, and that is P1 and P2, Walters and Peters, and Legare Simon, who is in P14. Marcus Ness showing a yellow triangle for an incident. Let's try and see if we can grab a replay of what happened there. I think we might have been a little bit too late on that replay to see what happened to Marcus Ness there. No collision evident on this stream. That is unfortunate. But hopefully that means that it was no major collision. Heading back up to our 2 leaders, still separated by less than half of a second. They are heading onto La Caixa now. And Jorge Esteban down 4 positions. Let's try and see what is going on with Jorge. Oh wait, I selected Darren Chen, not Jorge Esteban. The last letters were the same. That's what I saw. Jorge Esteban able to make the move on Marcus Ness there. Now only down 3 positions. Magnus Haukeba, and I believe his name is misspelled on the timing tower. I wonder if he selected the wrong name when signing up for the league, or if he maybe changed it, but I believe there was an O between the B and the E. But Jorge Esteban, after that little bit of a collision at the start, is now up into P9. Yes, Peters did get a big hit at the start. Lucky he could save it. That was between him and Jorge Esteban. I wonder if the replay will work, as Magnus Haukeba does set the fastest lap of the race, a 1:45.9. And you know what? I'm actually going to move this track map down a little bit because it's covering up that banner at the top there. So let's move that down a little bit and save. So that is now lowered a little bit. That will not be overlapping the timing barrier there. As Johan Hauben, our birthday boy, what happened to you? There was a little bit of a no-no incident. Let's take a 30-second replay. So Johan Hauben, I believe that was on the outside of Mircea Hatisi, or the inside, rather, going into T1. Johan Hauben in the Lamborghini there. Ooh, just turns in a little bit into Mircea, goes off track into the gravel. That's going to seriously slow him down. And we see a Beamer and the purple Mercedes of Paul Krobs get around. But does at least not lose too many positions after that. I believe that was Nicolas Castillo in the blue Porsche. As we see, Paul Krobs, I feel like slowing down again. I'm not sure what kind of strategy that is with Paul. We might see Paul going for a move here into La Caixa. He does send it up the inside with that purple Mercedes. Johan Hauben there, losing P14 to Paul Krobs. And we see, how the heck did Pashoff get back up to P4? He was... Or am I getting him mixed up with Jorge Esteban? I might be getting that mixed up. But Pashov was down a good number of spots earlier. Pashov now back up to where he started, as is Nico Dudek. So Dudek is right behind now Kurt Peters. It's still very, very tight for our leaders. Everyone's separated by just about 2 seconds up front. So we have a good battle going on for the lead. No one able to pull super far ahead, as Nico Dudek on that previous lap set a 44.7, only about 5 or 6 tenths off of what he set in qualifying. So for being on full fuel as we take it, that is quite a stonker of a lap from Nico. He is on the hunt of our leaders right now. And I wanted to try and see if we could... let's see if we'll be able to see the replay of that. Aha! This is the start. So we are going to see from the start what happened between... take a look at that white Porsche, Rosen Pashov going on the grass there. Braking. Oh, and that was the other Porsche of... I'm actually not sure who that is. That was... Wait. It's Pashov in the black and green Porsche. Who is in the white Porsche? It's Jorge Esteban in the white Porsche. So Jorge Esteban, let's, now that I know which driver was where, let's take another look at what happened on the start here. So Pashov in the black and green Porsche is going in the middle of Kurt Peters and Richard Walters. Jorge Esteban in the white Porsche on the outside there. Pashov taps Kurt Peters there, trying to widen the entry into T1, and that sends Jorge Esteban flying off. So it was Jorge Esteban, the big loser there, as we see a little bit of contact between Nico and Kurt. Let's see the replay here. What happened between our two drivers here? So heading into T1, we are on the main straight right now. Nico Dudek looking for a way past Kurt Peters here. Nico, I believe, is going to send it, and he does a little Ferrari on Ferrari action and sends it in a little too hard, has to really check up. Kurt carries in all that speed and then taps Rosen Pashov for good measure. So that is a little bit of a argy-bargy, I think my Canadian pal Reagan would say. Definitely not the cleanest racing. As we see, Johansson and Paul Krobs may have had an incident. Oh, and Paul Krobs is around. We're definitely going to have to see what happened here. So it was a big jumble up into turns 2 and 3. Paul Krobs, the purple Mercedes that we are tracking here. That is, I believe, Gary Bosman in front of him. So Paul, coming into T4, he just loops it. And that is, I believe he got shaken up a little bit by Vigard. Just a slight tap. And then we saw I believe that might have been Christian Calmaret in the yellow Ferrari there getting around. So Paul Krobs just losing the rear end of that Mercedes, going into T4, maybe carrying a bit too much speed for what the tires wanted to deal with. And we see Darren Chan down in last place. I did not see this before, but Darren Chan is in last. He has pit already, had a 35-second pit stop, and I'm not sure I can trust the pit stop timing for Vigard because it tells me he was stopped for 215 seconds. I don't think he was stopped for 3.5 minutes and still in P14, so I don't know if I can trust that. But Darren at some point has come through the pits. I'm not sure if he got damage at some point that needed to be repaired, or if he might have already wanted to satisfy his pit requirement. It seems a little bit early to have come in, but we'll have to keep an eye on how Darren is able to progress through the field as we go later on in this race. Vigard was able to get past Johan Hauben, our birthday boy, who we see on screen now, and Vigard now trying to look for a move around the outside of Mircea Hatisi here. Not going to work there through T5. That is a difficult move to make. And so Vigard just slipping back into the slipstream and just peeking in the mirrors of Mircea there, trying to show, hey, don't forget about me. I am here, as we see a collision for Johan Hauben. Let's try and see if we can see what happened there. So this is Johan and Nicolas Castillo, and just a little bit of a tap. Nothing major there. I think neither driver just looking out their windows to see how close they were together. Nicolas Castillo does end up the benefactor of that move, and they come to blows again! They are definitely hitting, so we missed the initial part of that contact because we were on a replay. Let's try and see if the game was able to save that. It might. So coming through T8, I believe that is Kamsa. Coming up to La Caixa here, Johan is going to look at the inside and brake way later than Nicolas Castillo. Castillo going a little bit wide. And I'm not sure if there was major contact there, if it even registered, but they did look pretty darn close between the two boys there. So Johan and Nicholas having a little bit of a battle there, as we see Pashov also showing a marker for contact. Let's try and see the replay here. Oh, Kurt Peters and Rosen Pashov going side by side a little bit, having a little bit of contact in T3, approaching T4 here at Repsol corner. Pashov having to back out of it a little bit. And Kurt Peters, you could see there, has definitely fallen off from Richard Walters and Nico Dudek, P1 and P2 in this race right now. So Pashov just falling a little bit behind. He wants to try and get around Kurt so he does not lose more time to the leaders. He wants to stay up in that battle. As we see, Vigard on the timing tower has passed Legare Simon. But apart from that, the main battles on track right now are Nico Dudek and Richard Walters. Let's try and take a look there. For Nico, his fastest lap is just about 6/10 faster than what Richard is able to manage. I wonder if Nico is running an alternate strategy compared to Richard or carrying less fuel. I'm curious to see what is going to be going on there. Nico might have gone with a strategy of splitting up his fuel. So he may have started with half a tank of fuel. Around halfway through the race, he'll come into the pits and basically take another half tank. Richard might have started with a full tank of fuel, knowing that he would not take tires, so that when he came in, he would not have to take as much fuel. But that means a much faster pit stop and a much less or a much faster stationary time. So we'll have to see how it works out for these drivers. But we did see there through T5, Richard did let Nico pass, and I think maybe is going to be just sitting in the slipstream here. But Nico already putting almost a second gap between himself and Richard. He is flying in that red Ferrari there, and we see the gap starting to build up across the field a little bit. Magnus Halkeba just half a second behind Rosen Pashov. Tyler Babin about the same behind Magnus, but those are some of the best battles that we have. Nicolas Castillo showing a white flag and is letting Paul Krobs by. Nicholas, what happened to you to be going slowly? And as we look at Nicholas, I'm going to take a quick water break. So Nicholas coming through T4. Oh! Gets a little bit too much curb, and so much curb that he ends up on the grass. Almost loses it, but well held, and that allows Paul Krobs, who has had not his favorite race, I don't think. Oh, Nicolas Castillo, we see him again. Getting a little bit too much curb and losing the rear end instead of the front end this time. Getting a little bit too squirrely off track. So that is a shocker of a lap for Nicholas. Has lost a couple of positions, just being a little too greedy, I think, on the left and right sides of the track. So that is not what Nicholas is going to want to see, and something he will want to avoid doing too much of going forward. Let's try and take another look at the battle that we have going on. Towards the front, we have Pashov still very close behind Kurt Peters, Magnus very close behind Rosen Pashov, and Tyler very close behind Magnus. So 4 cars in a row here, and they have definitely fallen off a good little bit. behind Richard Walters in P2, and Richard himself has fallen off a good ways off of Nico Dudek. The gap now almost 2 seconds between P1 and P2, so Nico definitely showing a lot more pace in the race than he did in qualifying, as we are approaching 16 minutes being done with this race. And Tracy, is Dudek the new Brenham? He might be, at least in terms of race pace. I know Brenham was always very, very quick in qualifying and definitely set the bar there. So if Dudek can improve his qualifying pace, he might be the new Brenham. But again, it remains to be seen what that race strategy is going to be like, what that fuel strategy is going to be like, as we see Pashov, again, that black and green Porsche, trying to send it up the inside of Kurt Peters. These two drivers have come to blows before, but Pashov now able to get the move done ahead of that black and orange Ferrari. Kurt Peters falling from P2 to P4 since the start of this race. But at the same time, might be carrying a bit of damage from that lap 1 collision, kind of initiated by Rose and Pashov there when they essentially made it 4 wide. So I wonder if that damage is harming Kurt a little bit there. Getting a little squirrely through T5. That allows Magnus Halkeba in the McLaren behind to get a little closer. But we'll have to see if Pashov is able to answer the call and start to pull away a little bit, or maybe even close the gap ahead to Richard Walters and stay with that leading group, because I know Pashov will definitely want to be a part of the conversation. Pashov, I believe, a race winner last season. If that was the case, he is going to want to maintain that streak of winning a race here in Bez Racing Team Season 5. So we'll have to see what Pashov is able to do. A little over an hour remaining, and I am very curious to see what the strategy is going to be like for the remainder of this race. And if my pal Reagan were here, I think he would say the same. Reagan, do you have anything to say about this?
Good luck to Kurt Peters, number 77. And good luck to all of our drivers, but especially Kurt Peters, of course.
Yeah. Reagan chiming in with a, oh no! I think I cursed Kurt. No, he is off track. Reagan was just talking about good luck to Kurt Peters, and right as he finishes, Kurt goes off. Kurt, we are going to see, I don't want to see the cockpit view. I want to see chase cam here. Kurt, you are going to lose it through T2. Coming through T1, that looked fine. Maybe a little bit too much curb there. Overcorrects, losing the rear end into the wall a little bit. Kurt Peters, oh no. That is not what we wanted to see for you. I apologize if I stream sniped you with that loving message from Reagan. But if anything, I would put more of the blame on Reagan for that. Kurt now down 4 positions since the start of the race, and 5 seconds behind Tyler Babin, and now has Jorge Esteban quite close behind in P7. Jorge lost again some spots at the start of the race, but now has climbed back to P7, now only down 1 from where he started in this race. But Kurt will not be happy with that overcorrection going through T2. Tyler will be happy about that. Stop filming Kurt and Johan. Speaking of Johan Halben, that is someone who we have not checked in with in a while. Johan Halben heading through, again, I believe that's turn 8. That was Kamsa before, heading up to Kaisha. He is sitting in P14 right now. Has put a good bit of distance between himself and Nicolas Castillo, who is down at P17. They were coming to blows a little bit earlier. Have not seen any major incidents from Castillo recently. And Darren Chan before was showing 30 seconds behind P17. That is now down to 14. So Darren, in clear air, has been able to close the gap down quite a bit. Again, he has already completed a pit stop. I'm not sure if it was within the pit window, so that'll be something to keep an eye on later if he has to come in tomorrow, or I was reading Tracy's message of sore head tomorrow, and I was going to say that Darren had to come into the pits tomorrow. That is not correct. I meant to say later this race. So I'll be keeping an eye on Darren there. As, yes, Johan Halban up 1 position overall. Again, that is our birthday boy. Jorge Esteban now about, that's Johansson. That is not the driver I meant to select. Jorge Esteban now about second to 7/10. Ooh, gets very close to the rear end of Kurt Peters there on the brakes into Caixa. Jorge Esteban really trying to utilize the full extent of those Porsche brakes. If you're not familiar with ACC, the kind of running joke, it's not even really a joke, it is kind of true about the Porsche, is that while it may not have the greatest top speed, it does have some of the best brakes of any car in the game. So Porsche drivers are typically able to brake maybe about 5 to 10, or maybe some of our experienced drivers are able to brake maybe 20 meters later than every other driver, but still maintain that apex, as we see Vigard showing a yellow flag, and that is a spun around Audi, I believe that is the car Vigard is in. Yes, that looks like an R8. We are going to have to take a look at a 30-second replay here for Vigard. We have a pink Audi behind pink Audi. I'm not sure if that's a little bit of livery coordination between the two Audi drivers there, but Vigard loops it, I feel like, in a very weird place. I have not seen a spin like that at that corner. Vigard, also a driver who has come to the pits before, starts to reverse a little bit. The blue Mercedes there, not really sure which direction to go. Luckily, they were able to avoid contact. No damage there, except to the ego of Vigard Johansson. So that is disappointing for Vigard. He will not be happy with that spin, and now has Paul Krobs, another driver who has been probably unhappy with spins today. So that is a little bizarre behavior from that Audi, maybe a little curse. I don't think I looked at people's liveries today. I think I have a sneaking suspicion of a logo that I'm seeing on the top. Oh, we see a little bit of a hair from Mr. Vigard. I have a sneaking suspicion, yes, there is a My Little Pony logo on the, many of My Little Pony logos on the Audi here of Vigard Johansson. I'm not sure the character names, but we have a bigger pony here, some Cartoon Network logos. I guess that is where My Little Pony is broadcast. A little pony on the side there, Cartoon Network there, and on the rear wing, and another My Little Pony on the rear end there. So, Vigard, I did not know you were such a My Little Pony fan, but yeah, I thought I saw My Little Pony on the Helicam. I didn't want to say, oh, is that My Little Pony, without being able to verify. I didn't want to disparage you, but no, that is indeed My Little Pony. So we will go back to our helicopter cam here in just a second. And you know what? I am going to throw it over to Autopilot to control our cameras from here. And Mr. Autopilot decides he wants to see Kurt Peters and Johan Halban back to back. I swear I am not controlling it. This is ACC TV, our application, controlling who we see right now, as well as the camera angles. So going right from Kurt Peters and Johan Halban, who I know some of our viewers did not want to see, especially back-to-back. Oh no! Tyler Babin is showing a yellow flag. We are going to have to turn off Autopilot and stick with this. Tyler Babin in the Porsche. Was that a Porsche doing Porsche things, losing the rear end? We are going to have to see. Coming up to Caixa, the hairpin after the middle straight, following Magnus Halkaba there. And Tyler, does he lose it in the same place Vigard did? Almost. A little bit earlier, but kind of loops it again. That is very, very strange. So we have seen Vigard lose the rear, we have seen Tyler lose the rear, and Paul lose the rear kind of mid or late in a corner, which is very, very bizarre car behavior. So I'm not sure if that has something to do with setup or, jitters from Season 5 starting, but that is something I don't think we've seen too much of in previous seasons and previous races. That is disappointing for Tyler, but again, he is doing a little bit more, again, according to him, of an arrive and drive this season. So maybe some more practice in that Porsche was needed to keep that car stable. Heading back over to Autopilot. Autopilot decides that we need to check back in with Richard Walters, who is 8 seconds now behind Nico, as we see Darren Chan has caught up to Nicolas Castillo and is making a move up to P17 now. So Darren, again, has made his pit stop and is starting to climb back through some of those lower positions. We'll have to see how high Darren can climb, but is now down 9 positions compared to where he started. But Richard Walters, as I was saying before, started on pole. He was our pole sitter ahead of Kurt Peters. Nico was able to get past a few laps ago and has just been sailing into the sunset. And Tracy mentioned earlier, is this the new Oystein Brenham? It very well could be. Oystein and Carl Nodell, 2 drivers that have had some very good battles here at Barcelona. And it looks like, Nico might be having some of the same skill around here as Oystein had, as we see Vigard getting around Hatisi there. Vigard spun a couple laps ago, just about the place on track that he is at right now, and Vigard now at 12, down 5 spots compared to where he started. Only 3 drivers in the same place as where they started. That is Jorge Esteban, who is now back up to P6. He lost some spots at the beginning of the race after some T1 contact. Gary Bosman, who we have not really seen or heard too much from of this race, but started P10 and still P10. And Paul Krobs getting around Hatisi there. Hatisi pulling off. I don't know if he was just realizing that Paul Krobs was faster and was being nice, but let's see a quick replay on this. We're going to go back in time a little bit and see the Helicam. So Paul Krobs is that purple Mercedes at the end of this little 3-car train here. Mercea, the middle car, this McLaren, and Hatisi just slows down, stays on the racing line. Paul Krobs, I don't think was expecting that. Jinx over to the left, our left, his right, because we're looking at this backwards, but was able to get the pass done. So I think Hatisi just being nice, realizing that his fastest lap was a 47.4. Paul Krobs' fastest lap, a 46.7. So Paul definitely with the pace over Mercea there and is, let through. Going up to the top of the grid, Richard Walters' last lap, a 46.3. Nico's last lap, a 44.6. Nearly 2 seconds faster in a lap, which is crazy. I, again, am very curious to see what the strategy is going to be like here, what the call is going to be later on in this race. But Nico's fastest, a 44.3, which you can see on the screen there. And we're going to do a comparison to, once ACC TV comes back, comparison to Richard Walters. You can see on the screen there, Richard Walters' best lap, a 45.4, so about 1.1 seconds slower than Nico, which is crazy to see from our pole sitter. So very interesting to see such different paces from our drivers in P1 and P2 as Richard gets that's Nico gets quite a bit of curb there through that little left-hander before they approach, I don't even know the turn number there, but towards one of the final corners here as he approaches now New Holland coming up to be the final corner. But Richard now 11 seconds and Pashov only a second and a half behind. So Richard, not sure what's going on there, but we will be keeping an eye on that battle through the race as we now cross the 50 minutes left marker. And Autopilot, let's throw it back to you. You immediately bring it back to Kurt Peters, who has Jorge Esteban 1.2 seconds behind in that white Porsche. And I'm going to turn off the lap time comparison there. But now taking a look at Paul Krabs, who is 1.7 seconds behind Vigard. Johan Halvin, again, I know our viewers aren't the happiest with seeing Johan, our birthday boy, on screen. But again, the computer is deciding who we are looking at. And now over to Darren Chan. Our autopilot just can't decide who we want to stick with. And now over to Nico Dudek. We are just hopping driver to driver. And now over to Darren. I need to try and change some of the autopilot settings and see if I can get it to change drivers a little more slowly. I feel like I can't even announce the name of the driver we're looking at before it switches over. But we are looking at Darren Chan, and just as I say that, we are going to turn off autopilot and take a look at Marcus Ness. That was the other pink Audi. I think I see some My Little Ponies there as well, so I think that was some livery coordination between the two pink Audis of Marcus and Vigard. Marcus heading into T1. We have seen some spins into T1 previously. Let's go onto the helicopter cam. Coming through T1 and just gets a little too much curb and nearly gets into the wall. Not quite getting into that wall though. Is able to spin it around and get back on track. Rejoin pretty safely in a gap there. Not the situation Marcus Ness would have wanted to find himself in, but I think that is now 4 drivers that have looped it, and Christian Comare. What has happened there? We see the flag showing an incident, but I didn't see one for another driver. I think that's him and Darren Chan, and Darren gives a little rear end bump there. Some Ferrari on Ferrari love. Christian just keeps it on the outside of turn 3 there. I think Darren was saying, hey, I want to get by maybe a little forcefully, and Christian says, all right, I'm not going to fight you. Darren definitely has the pace advantage there, about 2.5 seconds, his fastest lap over Christian. As we finish the replay there, we see Nicolas Castillo, another loop-de-loop there. We are going to see a replay of Nicolas Castillo here. Coming up to T5 in this Porsche. He had lost it in T4 before, or almost lost it. He did catch it. Exiting T5, gets a little bit on the gravel there, but that's not where he's going to lose it. Coming up to T6, gets a little on the grass on the entry, not able to slow the car as he wanted to, and I think carried a little bit too much speed, and ultimately that's going to send the car around there for that blue Porsche with some Publix sponsorship. As we see Marcus Ness at T2 on the track map. This is Ness again, and we see Vigard a yellow flag, so we're going to have to see what happened. Oh, Vigard is just in the pit, so I think that might be him exiting or entering is why that flag was there. So 2 yellow flags for our 2 My Little Pony cars. Marcus Ness again coming through T1, missing the curb on entry, but now coming through T2, gets too much curb there, and now into the wall a little bit. That's going to be a tiny bit of damage there. So Marcus has lost it at T1 and T2. I wonder if next lap, if he will be losing it at T3 just to keep the streak going. That is very unfortunate. And in both of those cases, he got onto the curb and he loses it there just a little bit as well. I want to do a 15-second replay just so we can do maybe a little bit more of an onboard, the rear end of this car here. Yeah, you can see a little bit of that snap oversteer. That wasn't the best angle that I wanted to choose there. There's the chase cam. I wish I had been able to get to that earlier. But Marcus Ness, it looks like as he's getting on the curbs in this Audi, the Audi not responding well. Maybe the ride height just a little bit too low because he's getting on those curbs and it's really unsettling the car. As we see from his spins in T1 and T2 the last couple laps. So very strange behavior from this car as we see Christian Comare showing a white flag for slowing down. That was him letting our race leader Nico Dudek by. Dudek now with a 16-second gap over P2, and P2 is Rosen Pashoff now. When did Pashoff get P2? That must have been, yeah, because this is a 30-second replay. So Pashoff did get by Richard Walters. It must have been some time ago when we were looking at all those replays. So apologize that we missed that action. But Pashoff now up into P2, goes a little bit deep there into Kaisha. Richard gets a little bit closer, but I think Richard, yeah, really struggling. I'm not sure if it's tires or just pace, if that BMW was set up more for speed and qualifying rather than the race. Not sure what's going on for Richard Walters there. But Pashoff now up into P2, but 17 seconds behind our race leader, Nico Dudek. So at this point, I'm kind of thinking no matter what Dudek does with his pit stop, if he needs to take a full tank or half tank or a little bit of fuel, whatever he does, I think he's going to be coming out of P1. We saw a bit of a yellow flag there for Legere Simon, but I saw on the track map that was just him exiting the pit lane, so nothing too big to worry about there. And Pashoff, yeah, now about a second ahead of Richard Walters, and Kurt Peters is very, very close behind Magnus Haukeba here. Let's try and maybe go to the helmet view of Kurt Peters here, as he is right on the gearbox of that number 95 McLaren of Magnus Haukeba. Coming through again, the turn number might be wrong, but I believe it's T8. Approaching the tight left-hander here. Not able to make a move at this point, is just going to be, I think, tucking into the slipstream as we see a couple drivers lower on in the field. Mircea Hatisi and Marcus Ness coming into the pits. We are 3 minutes away just about from the halfway point in the race as Nico Dudek sets a new fastest lap, a couple of hundredths faster than what he did before. Previous fastest lap was a 44.300. New is a 44.277. So Nico absolutely flying up in P1, now almost 19 seconds ahead of Pashoff. As we see Jorge Esteban, I think our highest placed car, coming into the pits, and Kurt Peters now right alongside Magnus Haukeba. We are going to need to go to Helicam for this. Oh no! That is Kurt Peters spun around. We are going to have to see the replay of this, and I think Chase Cam might be our friend here to see what happened between these two drivers. We'll be able to see what happened when they went side by side. So Kurt Peters here getting alongside the McLaren, some nice orange on both of them. Kurt Peters up the inside, they're braking around the same place, side by side through T1, sticking around T2. I think Kurt gets a little bit of oversteer. No, gets a tap from Haukeba there, and that sends him around and into the wall, and you can see the scratches on the rear end of that Ferrari. That is definitely going to be some damage as we see Marcus Ness, a yellow flag for exiting the pit lane, so nothing to worry about there. But Kurt Peters, that is tragic to see. He spun a few laps ago and now has been knocked off by Magnus there. That is unfortunate. We're going to have to leave it to the stewards to review that incident. But you can see not only the damage, but I wonder if let me switch windows to ACC. I'm going to go free camera here. We can maybe see it a little bit better, but you can see this diffuser just wobbling around, and the diffuser, in terms of car aerodynamics, gives so much downforce to these GT3 cars, F1 cars as well. Indy cars use them quite a bit. So the diffuser, a very, very important part of the car. If it's rattling around like this, that is going to be causing some unstable downforce generation and definitely going to be impacting Kurt Peters' pace. So that is not what he would want to see. Of course, he is in the car, so can't see this vibration, but he is immediately into the pits. Again, we're approaching the halfway point in about 30 seconds here, so he might have been wanting to pit this lap anyway, but with the amount of damage that he's gotten, he will want to try and get that fixed as soon as possible to try and see if he can salvage any sort of pace from this. And so along with Kurt Peters, we see the next car up ahead. I need to exit the... Why is this not working for me? I need to exit that camera. The next car up ahead is Bryce Prevost, the pink Ferrari, rocking the Iron Dames livery. So those two drivers in the pits, they're going to be losing a few spots, but that is because our drivers 1 through 6 have not come into the pits yet. And Darren Chan showing a little bit of a white flag. He was slowing down for some reason. We'll try and take a look at that. He might have been letting Nico Dudek by, as we also saw Christian Calmer going slowly. He was leaving the pits. Let's try and take a replay of Darren Chan here. Yes, that call was correct. He had just let our P1 driver Nico Dudek by, and then has the Porsche, I believe that's Tyler Babin, behind him by as well in just a little bit. So Darren Chan just being a good gentleman there, letting P1 by without too much fuss. Very good race awareness there. We're going to let the replay finish up here, and then let's take a look at Magnus Haukeba, who is now coming in for his pit stop. We are officially over halfway through. There are 38 minutes and 47 seconds remaining in this race. So Magnus Haukeba into the pits. Again, he had that collision with Kurt Peters, and Kurt Peters now leaving the pits, but he had quite a lengthy pit stop. So most other pit stop times that I'm seeing are in the low 30s. Kurt Peters was a 73.6 in terms of stationary time. So he was sitting there for quite a bit longer. I think got a significant amount of damage. From the initial contact with Haukeba, but then definitely from getting into the wall a little bit there. So that is unfortunate for Kurt. But we know Kurt, a very fast driver, will definitely be able to make up a couple of positions here, as Paul Krobs now makes his way up into P5 since Magnus Haukeba completed his pit stop. And Jorge Esteban, now up into P6, has also done his pit stop. So Jorge will, I think, be passing maybe one or two more drivers once they come in, once our top drivers come in for their pit stops, most likely in a few laps. But yeah, the grid getting shaken up here a good little bit with the pit stop cycle going on. And we are going to throw it back to autopilot to determine who we are looking at now that the action has settled down a little bit. It was crazy those couple of laps with some collisions, some spins. There was non-stop replays that we were looking at, as we are now looking at Paul Krobs. Again, we mentioned he was in P5. He's had a couple spins. Overall is up some positions, but still needs to come in. And Kurt Peters slowing down was under a yellow flag. Kurt Peters is pitting again? Why? Question mark. Is he coming in? Let's try and take a look at the replay. This is coming through the last couple corners of the lap. I wonder, did he speed in the pit lane and get a drive-through? Am I able to see that? We have had a couple of penalties. Car 65 and 32, it looks like, have both had stop-and-go penalties. Number 32 was Vigard, and number 65 was Christian. Are we able to see? Okay, so this was Vigard clearing his stop-and-go penalty. I'm not sure what it was for, but most likely speeding in the pits. And, oh, that was already what we were looking at before. Apologies. And yes, I do see a stop-and-go for car 77 was cleared. So yeah, that was speeding in the pit lane for Kurt Peters. Very unfortunate there. So not only had to stay stationary for quite a bit of time to fix some damage, but also had a stop-and-go penalty, had to sit for 30 more seconds stationary, coming back into the pit lane. That is a huge, huge penalty and very unfortunate, as we see Nicolas Castillo exiting the pit lane. So Kurt Peters went from hero to zero. Oh, and we even had in the chat from Vigard, you sped in the pit lane. I should have just looked at the chat to see that message. I apologize, but I'm glad you had enough time to come into the stream and send a message and let us know that you sped. Meanwhile, I was trying to look at all of our penalty messages to figure that out. So Disappointed for you, V-Guard. Are you completely parked now? Or are you just calling it quits? I see you're still in the pits. That is a My Little Pony car stationary for quite some time with a 4.5 minute lap time, it looks like right now. As we see Gary Bosman again. Okay, so yeah, V-Guard has retired. Drive through a double stop-go 30 and a spin. Definitely not what you wanted to see. Curse of the My Little Pony. It's definitely not the curse of My Little Pony for Nico Dudek setting a 43.822. That is even faster than any time that we saw in qualifying, as we saw, who was Bryce Prevost? That is Bryce and Johan Hauben. We're going to have to take a look at the replay for that to see what happened there. So we see Bryce coming around in the pink Ferrari here. Again, that's that Iron Danes livery. Johan Hauben up ahead in that Lamborghini. And Johan, I don't know, I think just goes a little deep. And yeah, just kind of has to dive into the off-track section there. And that lets Prevost up into P... Oh, I can't even see what position that is now. We'll see it when the replay ends. I believe that's P9, yes, for Bryce Prevost. Johan Hauben down into P10. And Tyler Babin just 2/10 behind Darren Chan. So let's maybe take a look over at that battle. As yeah, Tyler, and this is for position. Both drivers have completed their pit stop. So yeah, we mentioned earlier, Darren was in last place. He did his pit stop extremely early, but now puts him up into P7 with some of our top 4 drivers still yet to pit. So it could be even higher for Darren Chan, depending on how things end up shaking out. But this is a battle for position. Darren is going to be on very, very old tires. He pit, I mean, it was just a couple laps into this race. So Tyler, I think, will have the tire and the pace advantage, but Darren is definitely a quick driver and won't be the easiest to get around. And Tyler in the Porsche, I should also add, won't have the highest top speed. Let me take a look at our speed trap. This can't be right. It's showing Tyler's max speed in the speed trap is 200. Oh, okay, here we go. It's showing 251 kilometers an hour before. That seemed wrong. Tyler just now set a 266 kilometers an hour, Darren 265. So the slipstream is helping that Porsche, but a 1 kilometer per hour difference is not going to be what Tyler needs if he wants to get past. He's going to have to capitalize on a mistake or pressure Darren into a mistake, as we see Nico Dudek now into the pits. That relinquishes Rosen Pashoff up into P2, as Richard Walters has kept up with Pashoff these last few laps. They are separated by still about a second, as Tyler Babin and Darren Chan are still the battle to be looking at on track. So we have a good amount of action going on track. Nico now leaving the pits. He retains his third position spot. He is going into T1 right now, and P4, Gary Bosman, has not yet pit, but is only going through the final corner right now. So Nico solidly in P3 right now, but Pashoff and Richard still need to come into the pits, as Tyler looking for any way to get past Darren Chan right now. And V-Guard, great question. What happened to Kurt Peters? So Kurt, earlier on in the race, maybe 30 or 40 minutes in, maybe 20 to 30 minutes in, he had a spin going through T2, I believe. So he spun it himself, no issue there. A little bit later, he was battling with Magnus going through T1 and T2. They were side by side. Magnus took a little bit too much curb through turn 2, and I think the car hopped up a little bit, kind of sent him into the side of Kurt. That spun Kurt around into the wall, and he got a good amount of damage. So Kurt pit around the 40-minute mark, and when he did, he was also speeding. So he, like you, got a stop-go 30. So a couple laps in a row with not good luck, from getting hit to getting damaged to then getting a stop-go 30. So he yeah, has not been having a good last few laps, unfortunately. He was looking very strong in quali, and it was a little scary at the start of the race. I believe he was part of the group up front that was kind of tapping each other into the first corner at the start of the race. But yeah, he was doing very well, pacey as always. We saw last season that he was very, very fast. He might have just been too frustrated coming to the pits after getting spun out and was speeding. And is now sitting down in P15 as Johan Halben, flashing yellow. That is just because he was leaving the pits, so nothing to worry about there. But just for good measure, let's make sure that nothing was going on there. Let's take a look at Johan in that black, red, and lime green Lamborghini. Looking good, Johan, up 3 spots on where you started. That is a very good race so far from you. Magnus Halkeba now up into P5 as Gary Bosman comes into the pits. And Tyler Babin still unable to get past Darren Chan here. Again, that Porsche, we were talking about it before. It's good on the brakes, but the top speed is not there. Even in this revised version, the 992, it now is. The top speed has never been strong with this Porsche car. And the Ferrari of Darren Chan, even without Slipstream, is still able to stay ahead and maintain about the same speed as the Porsche with Slipstream. So as long as Darren can keep it clean and keep that consistency that we were talking about before that has maybe been lacking at some previous rounds, he should be able to potentially stay ahead of Tyler. But we see Darren going deep into T5. That opens the door up a little bit for Tyler, but nothing big enough to allow him to get by. Kurt Peters is a lap down to this battle, so he is right behind them, but I don't think will be challenging to get past. He knows that Tyler and Darren are fighting for position. We saw Gary Bosman with a yellow flag. Again, that was just him coming out of the pits, so nothing to worry about there. Up front, Richard Walters and Rosen Pashoff still separated by about 1 second. At this point, I'm not sure if Richard is just kind of minding those tires, keeping it clean, maybe trying to pressure Pashoff into using some more of his tires. But the top 2 still need to come in for their pit stop, I believe, and let me double check on this. Yes, every other driver has come in for their pit stop already. So it's just Pashoff and Richard Walters needing to come in. My guess is that they started the race with a full tank of fuel, so they are probably only going to be coming in with maybe about 7 or 8 minutes left in the race, coming in just to take maybe a liter or two, like the absolute minimum amount of fuel required to satisfy the pit window requirement. As I say that, disregard everything I was just saying. Pashoff is now into the pits. We're going to have to keep an eye on his stationary time to see if that allows us to evaluate if he takes tires or not. That relinquishes Richard back into the lead of the race where he started, but of course Nico Dudek had a huge lead going into his pit stop. So when Richard comes in, that should be Nico back into the lead as Tyler forces the issue around Darren, and I think that is job done. Yes, that is him up into the lead. We're going to have to see a replay of that battle because that was a very, very nice move from Tyler Babin. Let's chase cam this to see these 2 drivers side by side. Tyler through T4 sitting behind Darren. I wonder if Darren goes a little deep into T5. He does, deeper than he did before. That allows Tyler to seize the inside. That was calculated, to use some Rocket League terminology, and Tyler now up into P6 ahead of Darren. Vigard, what an amazing move. I fully agree. That was very nice. Rosen Pashoff showing yellow flag, just leaving the pits. Only a couple seconds ahead of Magnus Halkeba, so they may have a battle on their hands, but it will be curious to see where Richard Walters turns up after his pit stop. And Pashoff was stationary for over 30 seconds, so that indicates to me that he did take tires. That was not fuel only. And Vigard, big kudos to Darren as well. He has improved so much over the offseason. I fully agree. I think previous season, Darren might have, turned in on Tyler, caused a little bit of not a huge incident, but a little bit of a kerfuffle. Darren analyzing that pass very, very well, knew Tyler was there, some good awareness on him. And really, besides the little tap that he had on the rear of Christian Calmaret earlier, I don't think I've seen Darren have any contact, so that is great to see from Darren Chan. We saw in previous seasons that his pace has been improving so much, but the racecraft, frankly, has not always been there. I think now Darren might be a more lethal combination because he has the pace. He's been showing us the consistency and improved racecraft. I think he might be a threat for some really, really good results this season. And I believe he was promoted to Silver Class as well, moving up from AM. So he is going to need to keep that up if he wants to be competing with some of our very, very fast silver drivers. Tyler Babin only down one place on where he started, now ahead of Darren Chan. The only driver besides Marcus Ness, Kurt Peters, and Vigard to have lost spots. Again, Vigard has retired at this point in the race. Kurt Peters still running, but has lost quite a bit of positions, quite a bit of time due to being knocked off track into the wall. Had about 40 seconds of damage, I would estimate, that he had to repair based on how long he was stationary in the pits, and then getting a stop-go 30-second penalty in all of that. So Kurt not having a lot of fun, but Marcus only down one spot compared to where he started. Again, our birthday boy, Johan Hauben, is up 2 places in his Lamborghini. One of our only, let me go back to, instead of position delta, let's take a look at manufacturer. He's only one of 2 Lamborghini drivers, I believe, in the field. No, he is the only Lamborghini driver that we have in the field today, so definitely unique for him that he gets to be riding that Italian power. Most drivers in Italian cars opted for the Ferrari, which is in P2, P7, P8, P14, and P17, but Marcus Ness is showing a little bit slow. This is the other My Little Pony car. Are we going to see a little bit more of the MLP curse, as Vigard put it before? Let's look at the Helicam. So we saw Marcus... no, I think he was just letting Tyler and Kurt Peters through there, not wanting to fight them. But I want to say that was for position. I don't think he knew that Kurt was right there. Marcus did give up P14 to Kurt Peters. Again, not sure if he wanted to do that or if he was just being polite. But Marcus does a nice thing, just moves over for them. Marcus in that Audi has been losing it a little bit on some curbs, getting the car a little bit unstable. Not sure if it's set up or just not being confident with taking those curbs, but has been unfortunate for him. I believe that is now him 2 places down, as Pashoff is back in the pits. Did he get a penalty as well? He had already come in for his pit stop. When he gets moving again, I should be able to see if it says stop and go cleared, but that would be disastrous for Pashoff if he also got a stop and go penalty. He is leaving the pits, and yes, stop and go cleared for car number 4. That is Rosa Pashoff. So the story of the race seems to be who is and who is not getting a stop and go penalty, because that is our 4th driver with a stop-go 30-second penalty, and that is now Paul Krabs right on the gearbox of that black and green Porsche. So very, very interesting from our drivers. I think I saw quite a few drivers earlier this week practicing, but maybe they all needed some more practice entering the pits based on what I'm seeing now, and I think going forward we're probably going to see some more of that. Nico Dudek has our fastest lap of the race right now, sitting in P2, 22 seconds behind Richard Walters, but of course Richard has not come in for his pit stop. So I think Richard, as I was saying before, probably waiting until right before the pit window closes to come in for his pit stop. But But yeah, Nico just absolutely flying, 14 seconds ahead of Jorge Esteban there. And with all of that being said, before the pit stops, Richard and Pashoff were having a very hotly contested battle. They were just about a second apart, and now that Pashoff has... Okay, disregard everything I've been saying about pit stop strategy, because right as I was saying that Richard was going to wait to the end of the pit window, he comes in. So just disregard everything I say about pit strategy. Yeah, what I was saying before, Richard and Pashoff were separated by just about a second. Now that Pashoff had a stop and go, that should be a comfortable P2 for Richard Walters, but Richard is showing us in P9. That may just be a timing fluke of some sort. Yeah, because he came in normally. He didn't crash and return to the garage or anything, so I think we're just seeing some interesting timing flukes, I would say, from our system right now, because he is definitely not in P11 if he was just leading the race. So not sure what's going on there. We are going to be keeping an eye on that. Once the replay ends, we might see Richard already moving again. And yes, he is just leaving the pit lane here. Probably by the time he gets across the line, we should see an updated position for him, which is accurate, because that P11 is not. And Marcus Ness is around. He is stopped on the track where we saw him spin before. We are going to have to take a look at that. Again, this is the sister My Little Pony car. We saw Marcus spin at this exact corner before. Let's try and take a look at the chase cam to see what happened. And just loses it. So it looks like he was on the brakes, got off the brakes, and then as he was getting off the brakes, the car just spun around. So maybe, yeah, just some weird instability in that Audi today for Marcus. I don't think he's happy with the way that car is set up today. But even across the board, I mean, we have seen many drivers just lose the rear end mid-corner. It has been very, very strange, especially for the caliber of some of the drivers that we've seen do that. Some very unexpected mistakes from our drivers. So I guess between the stop-goes, between the spins, it has just been kind of a rude awakening for some of our drivers of what it's like to be racing for an hour and 20 minutes, as Marcus Ness again loses the rear of that Audi. Let's I know we were just looking at it, but let's take another look at that replay to see what was going on, because he was on the brakes. It looks like maybe it's something with his brake bias, because it looks to be when he releases the brakes, the rear of that Audi just gets completely loose. So here he is, widening the entry to T5 on the brakes. No, that was... I'm not sure. I really don't know what to say about that. Vigard saying the Audi is a nightmare. I would not disagree with that. Between everything we've seen from Marcus today, he is able to get through this corner cleanly at least. But man, this is that is not what you typically want to see. And Richard Walters is showing in P3 right now, so 6 seconds behind Jorge Esteban. Jorge is somehow nailing the strategy here. Jorge, I did not think was in contention for the P2 this race. Came out of nowhere. And Jorge was the driver, if you recall back to the beginning of the race. It's been a while. Vigard, I don't know if you even saw the beginning of the race, what happened. Let's take a look at... Oh, wait. Does it not even let me see the replay that far back now? It might not. I don't even know what incident it's showing us now. I'm trying to click on the replay for the lap 1 accident. Ah, dang, the replay doesn't go back that far. That is highly unfortunate. But anywho, what I was going to say with all of that is Jorge Esteban was the driver at the start of the race who was knocked off track. It was Nico, Richard Walters, Jorge, and Rosen Pashoff essentially going 4 wide. Pashoff knocked into the side of Richard, I believe, and that knocked Richard into Jorge. Jorge got hard into the wall and really lost a lot of positions. I think it knocked him down to P10 or P11. And he is now up into P2, so an incredible fight back there for Jorge Esteban. But at the same time, Richard, the last time we looked at the gap, it was around 5.5 or 6 seconds. It is now 4.5 seconds. So Richard, after his pit stop, might be trying to fight and get back that P2. Looking at the stationary time, it looks like Richard did take tires. So knowing that Jorge picked quite a while ago, Richard might be having the pace advantage, and we see beers empty. Need to see Johan again. Gladly I will show Johan again. It has been a while since we checked in with this Lamborghini. Johan still in P13, lucky number 13. Let's take a look at the, not personal best, the position delta. Halben still up 2 places compared to where he started, ahead of Kurt Peters, who has lost 12. Only 1 second behind Johan Halben, so we might have to stay along with this battle. Johan Halben and Kurt Peters now very close. The gap less than a second. Kurt has been closing that very quickly in that Ferrari. We have a little bit of Italian on Italian action between the Ferrari and the Lamborghini. Kurt trying to maximize the corners, and Halben, we saw that before from him. Maybe braking a little bit too late for that final left-hander of the chicane, has to dive through there, and I wonder if that was maybe a track limit warning. But Kurt able to maximize the exit compared to Johan, and Johan, I think, just keeping out of the way, allowing Kurt through. Hopefully we don't see a repeat of what happened to Kurt with him and Magnus earlier. No, Johan very much out of the way. Kurt Peters up into P13. Halben down into P14 as we see Christian Comare with a yellow flag. That was not him leaving the pits, I don't think. It might have been a yellow flag just of how slow he was going, letting some drivers by. That is Darren Chan behind, and who was in the Iron Dames? I can't remember. It might have been Prevost? Yeah, it's just a yellow flag for moving out of the way there. Was it Prevost? It was Prevost, yes, in the pink Ferrari there, as well as Darren Chan. And these two drivers having a very hotly contested battle for P6 right now. Prevost just under a second behind Darren Chan. Looking up ahead, we won't switch over to it yet. The gap is still pretty big, but Richard Walters now only 2.7 seconds behind Jorge Esteban, but with less than 12 minutes left in the race, it is going to be tight if he is able to make that pass on Jorge. Jorge, a very good defensive driver, so it'll be a challenge, I think, for Richard, even with a tire advantage, to get around Jorge. And just, again, cheers to Nico. Almost a 45-second gap from him to P2. That is some phenomenal racing. With how close it was in qualifying, I was expecting a much tighter battle up for the lead of the race, but Nico has just been absolutely rocking it and flying away. He might not have got the qualifying lap that he wanted, and Darren, I think, going a little wide. That may have been a warning, but that is Bryce right in the slipstream. They were weaving a little bit. Darren trying to break the slipstream. They're going to go side by side into T1. Darren braking earlier, but Bryce braking later, almost too late. Bryce, I think, is going to hold on to that position. Darren not able to fight back. I was worried that Bryce broke too late and was going to allow Darren back up in there, but that was some solid racecraft from the two of them. Again, as Vigard was mentioning, some much better racecraft from Darren, knowing when to fight and when to let the driver have the position. That is great to see from Darren. Still no huge incidents from him, and with 10 minutes left in this race, I think he will be on for a very good result. Only one position up from where he started, but compared to where we saw him earlier on in this race in last place, since he pit so early, that is good to see that he is still fighting with some of our top drivers. And yeah, again, since he pit so early, I bet those tires are not too happy, but with 17 seconds between him and Pashov, I don't think Pashov is going to be able to close that gap with less than 10 minutes remaining. We see Simon there flashing a white flag. I think he was staying out of the way of some of our leaders. That is Richard Walters and Jorge Esteban he led by. I had been talking about a blue Mercedes earlier. I never got to see who it was, and it is Simon here. So the blue Mercedes. Let's check out this livery as well. Maybe we'll need to do a quick livery review of all of our drivers since we did not do that in qualifying or practice. So we have... I'm not sure what this is. I at least knew My Little Pony. I don't know who these characters are. If anybody knows in the chat, please feel free to enlighten me. But yeah, I am not familiar with some of the artwork on this car. But it's a good-looking car. I like the blue, the lighter blue with this darker blue stripe. Some light blue accents. P2, fight on now. I think... Oh, and that's Brenham! Welcome to the chat, Brenham. We wish you were here in the race. It would have been exciting to see you fight Nico Dudek. But we're going to take a look at the battle between Jorge Esteban and Richard Walters for P2. Again, Richard pit much later than Jorge here, so will have the tire advantage. Now has the slipstream on the Porsche. I'm going to try and take a look at the speed trap here that they are approaching. Richard trying to stay in the slipstream as Jorge defends to the inside. Nothing doing here on this lap, but Richard right on the gearbox of that white Porsche. Through the speed trap, the speed differential was huge. Jorge Esteban maxed out at 264 kilometers per hour. Richard Walters at 272, so an 8 kilometer per hour difference, which doesn't sound like a lot, but over the course of how long this Barcelona pit straight is, you can catch up quite a bit and make up definitely at least a couple of tenths on the driver ahead. So now that we have, let me see how much time is left, a little under 7.5 minutes left. That could be 5 or 6 laps remaining. I think Richard will have a couple of opportunities at least, but again, Jorge is a very strong defender. He is Spanish, so maybe he has learned some lessons watching Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz in Formula One. And he is going to be making that Porsche very wide, almost as wide as that BMW is in real life. So Richard's still very tight on the heels of Jorge Esteban here. The gap about 0.4 seconds. It was 0.7 coming into this part of the track last lap. Now about half a second. Richard Walters going to want to be maximizing the exit here. I think Jorge was able to get some better traction going through here. Richard is going to want to try and close up as much as possible. Let's try and take a look at the chase cam of Richard Walters to see if we can get a sense for how close he can. If anything, I feel the previous lap he was able to get a little bit closer. I think that final corner Jorge absolutely nailed. Richard not as much. Richard, I gotta say, I love the little gold metallic components to your livery. That's very nice. I like the way the light is shining off of that. Now, only a couple of tenths between these two drivers. Richard is looking for any way past Jorge here. Jorge maybe a little squirrely on the exit of T4 there. Defending again to the inside. Richard taking a wider line. Mercedes TC and Marcus Ness flashing yellow and white. I think they are just moving over for some drivers potentially. We won't leave this battle to go check them out. As Nico sets another fastest lap, improves from a 43.7 to a 43.6. Again, that is about 4 tenths faster than what we saw in qualifying. So Nico absolutely flying. The gap nearly 50 seconds between P1 and P2. Jorge, I think, a little deep compared to what he wanted going into Caixa there. Now into the technical Sector 3, Richard right on the gearbox, and we see a little bit of contact between Bryce and Darren. I don't see either of those drivers off track or anything, so a little bit of contact. We won't go see the replay of that. We want to stay on with this battle. Let's take a first-person view of exactly what Richard is going to be seeing right now. And we're also going to be able to see the speedo here. 273 is the maximum speed I saw there. Trying to match Jorge on the braking, not enough to get close enough, so the pressure is going to be on both of these drivers. Jorge going a little wide. Richard, I think, able to close the gap just a little bit there. Richard is going to be trying to pressure Jorge into a mistake as much as possible. There are only 4 minutes left, with a 1 minute 44 roughly second. Oh, and there's contact! That is Richard Walters spinning around Jorge Esteban. Richard not sailing away. He is slowing down to allow Jorge to remain close. We are going to take a quick replay of that to see what was going on there for those two drivers. And I think Richard did let Jorge by, a very gentlemanly thing to do there. So Jorge, again, strongly going to be defending this inside. Just Richard on the outside, knew he could carry more speed, but Jorge had it perfectly parked on the inside, and Richard did not slow down to accommodate for that, and then ultimately did slow down enough to relinquish Jorge the place. Richard wants that P2, but that's not how he wants to get it. So we're back about where we were before, with Richard trying to chase down Jorge Esteban here. And with this battle and with how much they had to slow, and that is Nicolas Castillo parked in the entry to the pit lane. I don't think that's the the best place you want to pull over to let some drivers by. And he gets going again, but that has let Magnus Halkeba come back into the fray. Nicolas Castillo, I want to see what you were doing here, bud. Oh, he had a little half spin. That's interesting. So we can't really see it too well there, but yeah, he had a little half spin. I think on the relative he could see some drivers coming. He did not want to get involved in that battle, so he was just letting those drivers lead before he got going again. But yeah, just a little half spin for him. We saw him aggressive on some curbs earlier in this race and losing the front and rear end of that car, so I think that's just what happened to him once more. So he was not trying to intentionally park it on the entry to pit lane. That is just unfortunately how it ended up. But we are going to go back to our battle for P2 here. Back on the Helicam as Richard has at least pulled a little bit of a gap to Magnus Halkeba. So he doesn't have as much pressure from behind. Darren Chan in P7 still keeping the pressure on Bryce Prevost. But we are going to stay focused on this battle. P1 is going through T3 right now, so he has already crossed the line, and he is going to have, I think, one more lap to complete after he finishes this lap. So Richard Walters, when he crosses the line, will only have 2 more laps if he wants to try and make a move that is going to stick on Jorge Esteban. And I think Jorge is holding Richard up because Magnus, again, has been closing the gap a little bit as they've been going through sectors 2 and 3 of this lap. But that Porsche traction, it also has it's a car with very, very good acceleration. Was very good, but Richard, I think this is going to be one of his best opportunities. He is right on the back of that Porsche gearbox. Richard to the outside, Jorge defending that inside line as much as possible. This is going to be where we see if Richard can hang on the outside. He is not able to. Jorge sticks to the inside. That tire advantage for Richard not able to work out in his favor. Is going to have maybe a little bit of a run through T3 here. We're going to have to see if he is able to maybe send it up the inside of T3. Nothing doing here, and I think that is Richard's opportunity for this lap up. As we see, Kurt Peters was flashing yellow. Kurt Peters, P12, might have just been letting a car through, and we do get verbal confirmation from the engineer that Nico Dudek has started his final lap. So Nico, over a minute ahead of Jorge Esteban, started his final lap. Richard and Jorge here are on their second to last lap. Once they get to the start-finish line, they will be starting their final lap here. So about a lap and a half left for Richard Walters to be making a move, looking on the outside of Caixa here. Again, Jorge is strongly defending on that inside. Magnus Halkeba trying to get back into the fray, only 1 second behind Richard Walters. Richard just a couple of tenths behind, trying to use up that tire advantage as much as possible here. He only has, maybe a dozen opportunities, a dozen more corners to be able to make something work coming through the final corners. This is where Richard is going to want to set up as good of an opportunity as possible, but he gets onto the curbs a little bit there, does not get the exit he would have wanted, and is further back than he was on the lap prior. So I do not think we're going to be able to see Richard making a move here for P2. Jorge, I think, has a solid grasp. Richard is looking, getting in the mirrors of Jorge. Jorge didn't even have to defend there. We see Kurt Peters. I'm getting those two drivers mixed up. Kurt Peters going slowly, showing a yellow flag, going very slowly. Might even lose P12 to Mircea Hatisi there, and he does lose P12. So Kurt might have a little bit of damage or something. Tyler Babin going a little bit slowly. I think he might be slowing down. We see Nico Dudek about to cross the line. That is a win for Nico Dudek, his first race in our league. Congratulations to Nico, but the fight is still on for P2, P3, and P4, separated by less than 2 seconds. Richard a little deep into that left-hander there, half a second between him and Jorge. This is going to be a battle to the line between these two drivers. My money is on Jorge to keep it, but Richard had a very good run through that right-hander. Might send it. I think he might have been flashing Jorge a little bit there. He is going to be frustrated with how well Jorge's been defending. Gets a tighter line through that Caixa corner. He is trying to look on the outside and inside of every corner, letting Jorge know he is there. He wants that position. But Jorge, again, I said it before, an excellent defender, calm under pressure. He has done everything he has needed to do. Richard Walters unable to capitalize on his tire advantage. He will only finish P3. It is a P2 for Jorge Esteban. He is going to love that after the incident he had at the beginning of this race, getting knocked off by some other drivers. We get a little bit of some tint on the view of the helicopter camera from the flares going off in the crowd. But Nico Dudek, again, your winner, a 64-second gap between him and P2. Phenomenal result. Nico and Jorge doing some donuts there. We see Jorge Esteban P2, Richard Walters P3, Magnus Halkeba P4, just behind that battle for P2 and P3. Tyler Babin, 31 seconds behind. A quiet race. He finished exactly where he started in P5. He will at least appreciate that since he has not been practicing. Bryce Prevost up 6 places. A very good result for him. He will like to be seeing that. A great result for him. Darren Chan, again, only up 1 place. He pit very, very early, so his tires most likely would have been dead by the time we got to the end of that race. I am not surprised about that. Rosen Pashoff lost 4 places. Again, he got a stop-and-go penalty on his pit stop, so he lost quite a few positions because of that. Paul Krobs, a little bit of a rough start to the race, some spins and contact here and there, but ultimately finishes 2 places up. Gary Bosman, similar to Tyler Babin, finishes exactly where he started in P10. Mircea Hatisi up 7 places. He will be thrilled with that result. Was able to get Kurt Peters on the second to last lap, I believe that was. Simone up 2 places. Kurt Peters, definitely not the race he wanted. I went too far down. Kurt Peters, a stop-go contact that sent him into the wall. Some spins and potentially even some damage right at the end of that race because we saw some yellow flags from him. That is not the race that we would have expected from Kurt. We know how fast he was. His fastest lap was right up there with some of our leaders, but just very unlucky for Kurt in the initial race. But again, as we went over in the overview, drivers are able to drop their worst results. So this could be the round that Kurt drops from his final standings tally. Johan Hauben, happy birthday. You improved by 1 place compared to where you started. A great race for you. Hope you had fun driving that Lamborghini. Nicholas Castillo in that blue Porsche. Couple of incidents, a couple of spins, but ultimately still 1 place up on where he started. Marcus Ness down 3 positions on where he started. That Audi just looking like an absolute nightmare to drive. I would not have wanted to be in that car. And Christian Calmeret, another driver, finishing exactly where he started. So that is the race results that we have there. We have lost the connection to the server, so that is it for now. Thank you so much for joining us for this race. I know it's been a lot of me talking. I really wish Reagan were here, but we talked. He should be here for most of the races after this. I think it says a race in April, the other one that he might miss. So 2 weeks from now, on February 24th at the Nürburgring, you should be seeing both of us there and ready to commentate. You'll get a little bit less of me, but we hope you like the new format with qualifying everyone out on track. The racing is great so far. We are definitely going to be very excited to see what the Nürburgring can bring for us. And it looks like a set of ACC just crashed for me. Perfect timing. I am glad that it didn't crash any sooner than that. Otherwise, we would have had a failure on the stream. Thumbs up for the commentary. I really appreciate that. My voice is definitely sore. I think I'm going to go take a shower. It is sweaty in my room. It gets hot with my PC having to run ACC and the stream and everything. So I'm going to take a shower, rest my voice a little bit, maybe make a cup of tea. I hope all of our drivers will be able to take some rest after that great race for them as well. Thank you so much to all of our viewers for joining. We are at 12 viewers right now. That is a high for us, I think, at the end of a race. So I really appreciate all the action in the chat. Appreciate the commentary from you all. Again, happy birthday to Johan Hauben. And congratulations again to our podium finishers and especially Nico on a phenomenal race. We'll see you in 2 weeks and have a great day, everyone.